maybe, just maybe, when we're thinking about how to apply what we're doing in the martial arts to real life, we need to think about it like I think about looking for a job. Do you have experience in this field? Yes, you have training, but do you have real world experience in this field? As in, the people who may be going up against, may have real experience in violence. So they have 8 years of real experience in violence. And a lot of us in the martial arts have merely had exposure to violence. At best, I would probably say I've only had, maybe internship or practicum experience in violence, or entry level violence training. Not the real super duper experience, which means, or maybe I have a aptitude for survival. Because I've just managed to avoid really, really bad things, like things that have started to happen to me, and it could have gotten a lot worse. But I find a way to get out of it. I haven't had to throw hands that often. I've had to throw hands enough that I can use what I know. And that's it. But you got people who have a lot of experience in violence. They have a lot of experience in hurting people. And where I really feel bad for martial artists is not adults, it's with kids. I know some of my students, I try to tell them this point without, I don't want to creep them out or, make them uncomfortable or make their parents uncomfortable. And it's funny. It's like I have yet to make the parents uncomfortable, because maybe the parents try to tell them the same thing where I live at. And some of them do. They're like, see, I told you that, or something like that. But it's this thing where, and excuse me if I'm politically incorrect, you've got people that have made it out of the hood, right? I'll just use my culture as an example. You got people that made it out of the hood, even though I'm from the wood, not the hood. And so then they achieve this safe middle class life, which you should try to achieve. But then they have their kids, and their kids have no frame of reference at all towards how violent or bad something can be. So the child is probably going to freeze when they get attacked. Some of them do, some of them don't. Like the first place I assisted and instructed, we used to joke that we really don't have to teach the kids to do anything but how to kick. Because when they came into class, when they came to sparring, they could already throw hands. They probably already knocked some other child upside the head a few times. There's a bunch of the kids I kept getting, they already knew how to fight. I just had to show them how to use kicks. Now the funny thing is, they could fight against another hands person, but if anybody introduced the element of kicks and was just as tough as they were, they didn't stand a chance. So all I had to do was teach them how to kick and show them the form. And of course, they were ready for yellow belt fairly quickly. Not even white stripe like I do with my students that I got that are mine. I do stripe on a white belt, then yellow. They would go to yellow even under my standards that I have now, because they have experience in violence. They're going to be kids, and it's going to happen to people. You're going to be a highly trained martial artist, may even win some tournaments. And while I would say that some of those folks could probably beat me at a tournament, and I would tell you, you are a better martial artist than me. I would tell you, you are a better fighter than me. But because you don't have violence experience, the first time you encounter some real world violence, your freeze response is going to be a lot shorter than mine. Because to me, it'll be like, oh man, I haven't had to deal with this in a while. So it's a difference when you're coming back to something where you have to dust the rust off than when something is completely just foreign and alien to you. When something is completely foreign and alien to you, the oh snap, oh my goodness shock is huge. Even if it's not really that huge in real life, in your mind it is huge. It's huge. That's why in every other field of activity, if somebody hasn't done something for a while, they can take a refresher and go, oh yeah, okay, I got this now. Their learning curve is shorter than someone who's never done it before. So I think we need to come up with ways to do something about closing the gap of real world violence. Ironically, the things I think that help with that are meditation. I call it imagination, imagining yourself in different situations, seeing what you would do. I'm taking that from the sports psychology idea that the subconscious mind may not know the difference between a real event and an imagined event. It's like some people I'm sure have heard the experience when they had people do free throws in another group, imagine themselves doing free throws or walk through the motions at the line. And then when they tested them, there wasn't that much of a difference between the people who did a bunch of free throws and the people who imagined themselves doing free throws, that type of thing. So you're going to have to meditate on real world violence. And to me, I like the idea of cross training. That is taking a martial art that is by the world standards considered complementary to or the opposite of what you do. Because at least when you have to do something new with movement, it does kind of mimic the oh snap response. Like if you're used to the best is if you're used to stand up fighting and then you have to deal with groundwork. Oh snap, I have to ground fight. But what's funny is a lot of people don't think that that'll happen the other way around. They don't think that there are a lot of people that are like grapplers and wrestlers, and I can talk smack because I'm both of them. I'm striker and grappler. So don't say I don't know. And this is why a lot of people used to say that, oh, you don't need to wrestle in a real fight, because a lot of people, if they have like zero striking experience, and then they want to grapple with a striker, and they don't know how to ease into, I don't really know the technical term, but I know if you gotta creep up on the striker. You can't just go right in. You have to slowly close the gap, like an animal of prey stalking. Like a predator stalking its prey. You can't just jump right up on it. Ease up in there until they think they're comfortable, and then you pounce. Like a tiger. You have to do that with your distancing. But if you don't know that, if you just try to just bull rush in there, like you can in a tournament, a sparring session, because you don't have to get hit, you find out, wham, I got hit or kicked in the head. So, like going from karate to boxing to judo, like I did. I went from like karate to taekwondo to boxing to some kung fu stuff to judo. Just going to different styles that give you a different feel of movement, I think would help with that oh snap initial freeze response, because you're already used to doing something different. Now see, one thing that I don't recommend you do, that I've met a couple of people that have done on purpose, they say it works, I think it's too high risk, is like deliberately putting yourself in bad situations or deliberately hanging around bad people so you can learn how to handle them. There's a local urban legend where I am. Well, it may only just be from my generation. I happen to know it's not actually an urban legend really happened. But there were people who used to go out and hang in some rough bars because they didn't have real world violence experience. If it were a job, oh, you like real world violence experience, we have to start you off at 60K instead of 100K because you lack real world violence experience. But anyway, they were going down to the bars and picking fights with people, right? So they would they beat a couple of people because now This is a paradigm of a lot of training in the field actually helped them beat some people that had training in the field, experience in the field. So the person who was highly trained in fighting for martial arts actually beat the person whose primary paradigm of violence was, bar brawls. Contrary to popular opinion, yes, a martial artist can beat a bar brawler. Oh, I hope that don't violate copyright laws. But, here's the but. And this is something a lot of people don't want to own up to. And that is, some of those guys got beat up. They eventually started getting beat up because people who had martial arts training and the real world brawling experience didn't appreciate what they were doing. They felt like those guys were bullying, which they were. So they started showing up at these bars. And then when the martial artists would pick the fight with them, you have training versus training and experience. Training and experience wins. Sometimes with drastically comic results. Now see, don't get it twisted. If somebody is really good at stabbing someone with a knife and they've gotten that down, to me, that's training. See, in my book, it doesn't have to have pajamas on. Well, you don't have to have pajamas on. By that, I mean the uniforms. In order for it to be training. If it's training, it's training. If it's being taught to you, it's somebody showing you how to do something. So it's still training. It may even be considered informal training, but it's still training. Just like how I learned how to do Unix. I first learned how to do Unix from someone who knew more Unix. And he didn't have a classroom. The price was a barbecue chicken sandwich. Barbecue chicken sandwich and a soda. And I learned a new Unix trick. But that was still one-on-one training in Unix. People were like, you were pretty good at Unix. When I finally had to use it on a job, long after that one, it's like, well, you don't have advanced knowledge of Unix really, but the Unix that you know well. You have it down cold. Well, hey, Unix is an operating system. If you don't know, look it up. Not Unix, Unix. But that's how I learned my Unix. I didn't take a class in it for a long time. And then by the time I really needed to do something more advanced, I could use the book and figure out what I needed from there. So, the whole thing of violence experience, it works like that too. Some people may say I'm comparing apples and oranges. In a way I am, but it's still, I like to look at violence as still human interaction. It's still, and this isn't even necessarily my idea, it's still in a way a form of human communication. It's still an area of people activity. So it's still a dynamic of interaction, of behavior. It's still a behavior. It's still an activity. It's still a thing that people do. So when we're training people and when we're training ourselves, I guess we need to keep in mind the limitations on what we can convey in the classroom and what can only be taught by experience. That's the battle that I think that we're always going to have in the transmission of knowledge, whether it be martial arts or IT or anything else. Peace.